Welcome to the world beyond imagination. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And enjoy the journey. The hall smelled like cold iron, incense, and old stone. Torches burned high on the pillars, but the light never fully reached the corners. It only made the shadows look deeper. A crowd stood packed in rows behind the armored guards. Thousands of shapes breathing as one creature, waiting to see if the human would beg, break, or bleed. Caden kept his shoulders straight as he walked forward shirtless, his skin marked with bruises from the journey, and with the thin scar of a collar that had only recently been removed. Every step echoed. Every echo reminded him that he was alone in a foreign world. At the far end of the hall stood 4 women in elaborate armor, each one tall, sharp, and unreal, like statues that had stepped down from their pedestals to judge him. Behind them, higher on a platform, a massive carved figure of a warrior god loomed, its muscles and stone eyes catching the overhead light like a warning. The queen's voice struck the air like a blade. "Choose one of my daughters, human." The crowd rippled. Delighted, hungry, cruel, Caden lifted his chin and looked at the 4 women. And he understood at once why this ceremony existed. It was not a gift, it was a weapon. The Vayari Empire had crushed 3 rival clans in one season. Their ships had blotted out the moons. Their soldiers had marched through cities like fire through dry grass. Now they had reached the edges of human space. And instead of declaring open war, they had offered a bargain. A bride pact, a blood treaty, a chain wrapped in silk. Take one daughter, become family, become property, refuse. And your species becomes the next lesson they teach to the stars. The queen sat above them all, her crown thin and cruel, her eyes calm in the way of someone who never feared consequences. Her daughters stood below like blades arranged on velvet. The first, on the left, had blue skin and long pale hair that fell like frozen water. Her gaze was cold, precise, measuring him as if he were a problem to solve. The second had orange-red skin and bright red hair like flame. Her mouth held in a hard line that promised pain. Her armor seemed to lean forward with her anger. The third had light green skin and hair like white silk. Her stare was stern, almost bored, as if this ceremony were a tedious duty she had performed too many times. The fourth, on the right, had purple-toned skin and pale hair with a faint blush near the roots. And something about her posture looked slightly off, not weak, not relaxed, just guarded, as if she expected the world to hit her again. The crowd whispered. They were all terrifying, and still. Caden noticed what the crowd noticed, what the guards noticed, what the queen wanted him to notice. 3 of them stood like perfect war icons, their armor polished, their faces unmarked, their confidence obvious. The fourth carried the smallest flaws, a faint scar at her jawline, a slight asymmetry in her features, an old burn line along her collarbone that her armor could not fully hide. She was the one the crowd had already decided was less beautiful, less worthy, less desired. Caden could almost taste their expectation. Pick the prettiest, pick the strongest, pick the one who will break you the fastest. The queen leaned forward, her voice soft now, as if she were offering kindness. Choose, and your people live. Caden's heart hammered, but his face stayed still, because his fear was not the worst thing in him. The worst thing in him was rage, the kind that could ruin a plan if he let it speak. He had watched Vayari ships drift near human colonies like wolves circling a campfire. He had seen the recordings of what they did to cities that resisted. He had come here on purpose, even though everyone called it suicide, because someone had to step into the mouth of the beast and learn how its teeth fit together. He took a slow breath, and the hall quieted. Then he walked toward the daughters. The blue-skinned one watched him like a sniper watches a target. The red-haired one's fingers flexed as if she wanted to draw blood right there. The green-skinned one's eyes narrowed. Amused, the purple-skinned one barely moved. but her gaze tracked him with the careful attention of someone used to being blamed. Caden stopped in front of them, close enough to see the fine scratches on their armor, close enough to hear the faint mechanical hum of something hidden beneath their plates. He turned his head slightly and looked up at the Queen. "You want me to choose," he said. The Queen's lips curved. "Yes, human, choose." The crowd held its breath. Kaiden's eyes moved across the four daughters again. But not the way the crowd did, not the way a buyer inspects merchandise. He watched their shoulders, their stance, the angle of their wrists, the tightness around their eyes, the tiny tells of how each one carried her life. The blue one carried certainty, the red one carried hunger. The green one carried contempt, the purple one carried restraint. He stepped forward, and the crowd leaned in, expecting him to point toward the flawless ones. Instead, he turned toward the fourth, the one the whispers called the ugliest. He raised his hand, not touching her, just indicating. "I choose her," he said. For a heartbeat, the entire hall forgot how to breathe. Then the crowd exploded into laughter and shocked murmurs. Even some of the guards blinked, confused. The red-haired daughter's mouth opened in disbelief, then curled into a grin like a knife, as if she had just watched him dig his own grave. The green-skinned daughter tilted her head, amused. The blue-skinned daughter's eyes narrowed sharply. Suspicious now, the purple-skinned one, the chosen one, did not smile, did not gloat, did not even look relieved. She just stared at Caden, as if she could not understand why someone would do this to himself. The Queen's expression did not change, but something colder appeared behind her eyes. "Interesting," she murmured. The chosen daughter stepped forward, armor whispering, and her voice was quieter than the others. "Why, human?" The crowd quieted again, waiting for him to insult her, waiting for him to say something cruel enough to entertain them. Caden looked at her properly now, and when he spoke, he made his voice steady. "Because you are the only one who has been hurt and still learned control," he said. A ripple went through the hall, confused anger. The chosen daughter's eyes flickered, just once, like a door opening a crack then slamming shut. The Queen raised a hand, and the crowd silenced under the invisible weight of her authority. Then she stood, and her robes fell like a shadow. "Very well," she said. "By our law, the human is chosen." She turned her gaze onto the chosen daughter, Princess Seraphine. "Step forward." The name hit the hall like a bell, and Caden felt the air shift. Because a name carried power here. Seraphine stepped forward, and as she did, Caden noticed a small tremor in her left hand. A tremor she hid by curling her fingers into a fist. The Queen spoke again, her voice smooth. "You belong to him now," the crowd murmured. And Caden heard something else beneath it, a faint sound like distant static. He realized the walls were embedded with listening nodes, and the pillars were not just stone. They were conduit. This place was not only ceremonial, it was a cage built to record every breath, every promise, every weakness. Seraphine's eyes stayed on him, and she leaned closer, just enough that only he could hear. "You made a mistake, human," she whispered. Caden kept his face calm. "No," he whispered back. "I made a choice." Her throat moved, as if she swallowed something sharp. The Queen's guards approached, heavy footsteps, and a collar device was brought forward. A marriage band, a chain disguised as jewelry. Caden watched it with a stillness that made the guards hesitate. The Queen smiled again, slow and pleased. "Wear it, human, and your species will be spared." Caden held out his hands, and the guard moved to clasp the band around his wrist. In that moment, Seraphine's eyes flared, and Caden saw it, the shocking secret, not in words, not in a confession, but in a flicker beneath her skin. Symbols, faint and luminous, like circuitry made from starlight, pulsing under her purple-toned flesh. The markings were hidden, suppressed, but not gone. He had seen those shapes before, in classified human files. in the wreckage photos of a forbidden alien artifact found drifting between systems. Ancient tech, older than both their empires. Tech that could bend gravity and rewrite shields like paper. Tech the Vayari queen would kill to possess. Seraphine was not just a princess, she was a vessel, a living lock. A key that the queen did not fully control. Kaiden's pulse stayed calm only because his mind went very cold, very fast. He understood now why the other daughters looked at her the way they did. Not just disgust, not just pity, fear. Because if Seraphine ever awakened what was inside her, everything would burn, including the throne. The guards snapped the band shut, and Kaiden felt a small sting as it bonded to his skin. The queen's voice rose formal and triumphant. The pact is sealed, the crowd roared, but Seraphine did not look at the queen. She looked at Kaiden, her gaze sharp with warning. "You do not know what you chose," she whispered. Kaiden finally allowed a tiny smile. "I know enough," he whispered. "And I know you are not free," the queen gestured. And the guards moved them toward the side passage, away from the crowd. Toward the chambers where the husband would be kept like a prized animal. As they walked, Kaiden felt the band tighten slightly, reacting to his heart rate. Measuring, learning, a leash with a brain. The corridor was narrow, lit by pale lamps, and the noise of the crowd became a distant storm behind them. Seraphine walked beside him in silence, her armor heavy, her steps controlled. But he could sense her tension like heat. At the first turn, she spoke without looking at him. "They will use you against me," Kaiden nodded. "Then we do not give them what they want," he said. She gave a quiet, bitter laugh. "You think you can outplay my mother, human?" Kaiden kept walking. "I think your mother believes in only one kind of power," he said. Fear. Seraphine's eyes flicked toward him. "And what do you believe in?" Kaiden's voice lowered. "And he put weight into a single word choice," he said. They reached a chamber with doors made of dark metal and carved bone. Guards opened it, shoved Kaiden inside, and shut it with a heavy lock. Seraphine remained outside for a moment, her silhouette framed by the corridor light. Kaiden stepped closer to the door, not touching it. "They will watch us," he said softly. Seraphine's jaw tightened. "I know," Kaiden inhaled, then spoke louder. "For the listeners in the walls, my wife," he said. "I chose you because you are mine now. And you will obey me." The words tasted like poison. But he forced them out, silence. Then Seraphine answered in a calm voice. "Playing the role, yes, husband." The guards relaxed slightly, satisfied, but then, in a breath so faint that only Kaiden could catch it through the seam of the door, she whispered, "Thank you." Kaiden closed his eyes for 1 second. Because that single whisper carried more pain than any scream. Night fell, though the Vayari ship city never truly had night. Only the dimming of the lights to mimic it. Kaiden sat on the edge of the chamber's stone bed, staring at the band on his wrist. Feeling it hum softly, he thought about Earth. About the small house on the coast where his sister waited. About the way humans loved stubbornly, even when love was dangerous. He thought about the mission, about the transmission device hidden under his molar, waiting for the right code phrase to send what he learned back to the fleet. And he thought about Seraphine, and the glowing marks under her skin, and the way her eyes had looked at him when he chose her. Not hope, not joy, a warning wrapped around a question. "Why would you choose me?" The door opened without a sound. And Kaiden stood instantly, his muscles ready. Seraphine entered alone, helmet removed, hair falling pale over her shoulders. She shut the door behind her, and for a moment, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. Kaiden kept his voice neutral. "They let you visit," he said. Seraphine walked closer, then lifted her hand and pressed her palm against the wall. A faint shimmer spread outward, like heat over stone, then vanished. Kaiden felt the air change. The quiet became deeper, thicker. Seraphine looked at him. And her voice was different now, no longer careful. "The walls are deaf for a few minutes," she said. Caden stared, then nodded slowly. "How?" he asked. Seraphine's eyes hardened, because my mother never understood what she chained. She said, she tapped her own chest. "Right above the hidden glow, this is not Vayari. This is older than their empire, older than their gods." Caden spoke carefully. "You are a key." Seraphine's lips pressed together, and her control cracked just enough to show the fear underneath. "I am a weapon," she said. "My sisters call me ugly because they think my scars are the problem, but the scars are only the cage marks." Caden took one step closer, slow. "They hurt you." Seraphine's eyes flashed, and for 1 second, her restraint failed. "Yes," she hissed. Then she forced it down again, breathing through her nose. "My mother tried to carve the light out of me," she said. "She wanted to own it without becoming it. When she failed, she hid me, used me as a threat, used me as a warning to keep the court obedient." Caden felt something hot rise in his chest, and he let one word come out with quiet force. "Enough," he said. Seraphine looked at him, startled. "You do not get angry for me, human," she said. Caden met her eyes. "I do," he said, "because you are not a tool. And you are not a joke for their crowd." Seraphine's breath shook, and she turned her head away as if she refused to let him see her crack. Caden softened his tone. "Why did you warn me?" he asked. Seraphine's voice dropped. "Because if you stay, you will die," she said. "The band on your wrist can crush your heart with a thought from my mother." Caden lifted his wrist, showing it. "Then we remove it," he said. Seraphine gave a short, humorless laugh. "No blade can cut it. No acid can melt it. No lock can open it." Caden stared at the band, then looked back at her. "But you can," he said. Seraphine froze. Caden leaned forward slightly, words steady. "Your light reacts to me," he said. "I saw it under your skin when they clasped the band. It pulsed like it recognized something." Seraphine's eyes narrowed, suspicious and afraid. "What are you, human?" she whispered. Caden's throat tightened, and his voice came out low, honest. "I am someone who refuses to let my people be hunted," he said. "I came to find a weakness, and I found you." Seraphine's face twisted with pain. "Do not make me your weakness," she said. Caden shook his head once, slow. "You are not my weakness," he said. "You are my ally, if you choose to be." The word choose hung between them, heavy with meaning. Seraphine stared at him, as if she had never heard that word spoken to her without cruelty. Her hand lifted, hovering near the band. "If I touch it, it will alert her," she said. Caden did not flinch. "Then we do it at the right moment," he said. Seraphine's eyes sharpened. "There is no right moment in my mother's court," she said. Caden's mouth curved slightly, and he let one word land with bold certainty. "We make one," he said. Seraphine's breath caught, and her gaze flicked down, then back up. "Why did you choose the ugliest one?" she asked again, softer now. Caden answered without hesitation. "Because everyone else here is trying to win," he said. "You are the only one trying not to become like her." Seraphine's eyes shone, not with her hidden light, but with something more human than either of them wanted to admit. She swallowed, then nodded once, a tiny motion that felt like an oath. "There is a ceremony tomorrow," she said, "a public vow before the fleet commanders. My mother will display you. She will want you to kneel. She will want the crowd to see you as proof that humans can be owned." Caden's jaw tightened. "Then tomorrow I do not kneel," he said. Seraphine's gaze locked on him. "She will kill you." Caden spoke softly, but his voice carried a steel calm that made the air feel sharper. "Then tomorrow, we show them what humans do when cornered," he said. Seraphine's expression trembled between fear and something like awe. She stepped closer, and her fingers touched his wrist. Just lightly, the band hummed louder, then the light beneath her skin pulsed. Caden felt a warmth spread through his arm. Then a strange sensation, like the band was suddenly unsure of itself. Seraphine's eyes widened. "It recognizes you," she whispered. Kaiden's heart raced, and he forced himself to breathe slowly. "Why?" he asked. Seraphine's voice shook. "Because the ancient makers built these locks for minds that could endure," she said, "for beings who could carry pain without surrendering." Kaiden's throat tightened. "Then it was built for us," he said. A faint smile cracked through Seraphine's guarded face. "Fragile as glass, do not die tomorrow, human," she said. Kaiden answered with a quiet intensity. "I did not come here to die," he said. "I came here to bring you out." Seraphine held his gaze, and for the first time, her eyes looked less like a prisoner's and more like a warrior's. She nodded, stepped back, pressed her palm to the wall again. And the shimmer returned. The deafness dropped away. The chamber's silence became ordinary again. Seraphine lifted her chin, put her mask of control back on. Then she opened the door and left as if she had only come to fulfill her duty. Morning arrived with drums, horns, and the heavy roar of 1,000 voices. Kaiden was dragged into the main hall again, the crowd louder than before. Starving for humiliation, the queen sat high. Her commanders arranged like vultures beside her. Seraphine stood at Kaiden's side in full armor, helmet on, face hidden. The other daughters stood behind, watching like judges. The red-haired one looked delighted. The blue-skinned one looked wary. The green-skinned one looked entertained. The queen rose, her voice amplified through the hall. "Behold the human," she declared. "He will kneel and swear obedience to the empire." The crowd roared. A guard shoved Kaiden's shoulder, forcing him toward the floor. Kaiden did not bend. The guard shoved harder, and the band on Kaiden's wrist tightened, pain spiking up his arm, threatening to seize his chest. Kaiden clenched his teeth, and he spoke loudly for all of them. For the listeners in the walls, for the cameras in the pillars. "Eno," he said. The hall snapped into stunned silence, like a throat closed around a scream. The queen's eyes narrowed, and her voice became soft. "Deadly kneel human," she said. Kaiden looked up at her, and he let his next words carry across the hall like fire. "You offered me a choice," he said. "I chose, now I offer you a choice." The commanders shifted, the guards tightened their grip. The crowd buzzed with confused anger, the queen's mouth curved. Amused, "You offer me nothing," she said. Kaiden turned his head slightly toward Seraphine. "Just enough now," he murmured. Seraphine's hand moved, quick as a strike, pressing 2 fingers against the band. The hidden marks beneath her skin flared, bright enough that even through armor seams, thin lines of light pulsed like living lightning. The band screamed, not in sound, but in vibration. The metal trembled as if it were afraid. Kaiden felt pressure release from his chest, and the band loosened. The guards stared, shocked, and one stepped back. The queen's eyes widened for the first time. Fury cracking her calm, Seraphine lifted her helmet off, and the crowd gasped, because her face was lit from within. The scars no longer looked ugly. They looked like a map of survival. Seraphine's voice rang out, stronger than any of them expected. "Mother," she said, "you never owned me." The queen's voice snapped like a whip. "Silence, monster!" Seraphine stepped forward, and the light under her skin surged, the ancient symbol lines forming a pattern that spread over her armor like a star constellation coming alive. The pillars' listening nodes flickered. The torches flared. The air itself seemed to bend. Kaiden felt gravity shift, just slightly. Like the room had inhaled, the crowd began to panic. Some shouting, some falling back. The queen's commanders drew weapons. Shouting orders, Kaiden raised his voice. And he chose his words like bullets. "People of the Empire," he called. "You were told she was ugly. You were told she was broken. You were told she was a shame. But look at her now. Look at the one you mocked. Look at the one you feared. the hall shook, and the massive warrior statue in the background cracked along its chest. A thin line splitting stone, as if the ancient power in Seraphine refused to be watched by false gods. The queen screamed. Rage exposed, "Kill them!" The guards lunged. But the floor beneath their feet rippled, and they slammed down as if gravity suddenly doubled. Their armor clanging, their breath crushed. Seraphine looked at Caden, eyes blazing. "I cannot hold this long," she said. Caden's mind moved fast, sharp, and he spoke with fierce clarity. "Then we do not hold," he said. "We end it." He turned toward the queen, voice thunderous. "You wanted a human to kneel," he shouted. "Here is what humans do instead. We stand." Caden lifted his wrist, and Seraphine touched the band again. This time the band did not resist. It opened like a flower of metal, releasing with a final shiver. Caden ripped it free and threw it to the floor, where it clattered like a dead chain. The crowd screamed, the commanders pushed forward, and the queen's face twisted with pure hatred. Seraphine stepped between Caden and the throne, her light rising higher, the air glowing around her like dawn breaking inside a cave. Caden leaned close and spoke into the hidden transmitter in his mouth. Biting down on the trigger phrase, "Eclipse Gate," he whispered. The signal shot outward through the ship city. Through the relay lines, Seraphine's power had awakened. Through the very systems the Empire trusted. Far beyond the hall, beyond the columns, beyond the screaming crowd. Human ships received the data they had prayed for. Coordinates, weaknesses, and one name, Seraphine. The queen lunged forward in fury, but Seraphine lifted her hand, and the air hardened like glass, stopping her, freezing her in place like an insect pinned to a board. Seraphine's voice shook. Not with fear now, but with grief. "I wanted to love you once," she said. The queen spat. "You are a tool." Seraphine's eyes filled with tears that did not fall, because she would not give the queen that satisfaction. "No," she said, "I am a choice." She turned to the crowd, voice ringing like a bell that shattered lies. "You can keep serving a throne that feeds on your fear," she said. "Or you can remember that even an empire is made of people. People can choose." The hall trembled again, and the listening nodes died one by one, sparks falling like tiny stars. The guards who could still move began to back away, not because they were merciful, but because they were terrified. Caden stepped to Seraphine's side, and he spoke with quiet intensity that carried farther than shouting ever could. "She is not your shame," he said. "She is your mirror. If you call her ugly, you are calling your own cruelty beautiful." Silence spread like a tide, and in that silence, something changed. A commander lowered his weapon. Then another, then a guard. The queen looked around, stunned, seeing loyalty crack. Her voice rose, desperate now. "Do not listen, obey me." But the crowd no longer sounded hungry. It sounded uncertain, frightened, awake. Seraphine's light softened, and the gravity pressure released. Guards gasped. People stumbled. Caden leaned in close to Seraphine, voice low, urgent. "We need to move," he said. Seraphine nodded, and with a final gesture, she shattered the glass wall holding the queen, not to free her, but to throw her backward onto her own throne platform. Humiliated and raging, the queen screamed as she fell. Her crown clattering, Caden and Seraphine ran, boots and bare feet striking stone, racing through corridors as alarms began to howl behind them. The Empire's perfect image cracked and crumbled, not just in stone, but in belief. They reached a docking corridor where a small craft waited. One Caden had memorized from stolen schematics. Seraphine slammed her palm against the hatch, and it opened as if recognizing her. They climbed inside, and Caden grabbed the controls. Hands steady, eyes fierce, Seraphine sank into the seat beside him, breathing hard, the light beneath her skin fading. leaving her looking suddenly exhausted, painfully young. Caden glanced at her, and his voice softened. "Are you with me?" he asked. Seraphine closed her eyes for a heartbeat, then opened them, and in her gaze there was fear, but also something new, something that had not existed in her life until he pointed at her and said, "I choose her, yes," she said. Caden slammed the ignition, and the craft lurched forward, shooting out into the open airspace behind them. The ship city's defenses tried to lock on, but the systems glitched, confused by the echo of ancient power still lingering in their circuits. A burst of light flashed in the distance as human ships emerged from concealment, not firing blindly, but moving with precision. Because the data had arrived, because the trap had been mapped. Seraphine stared out at the stars, her voice raw. "I thought no one would ever choose me for anything but punishment," she whispered. Caden kept his eyes on the flight path, but his answer carried warmth. "Steady and true. Humans are strange," he said. "We choose the wounded, and then we build a future around them." Seraphine swallowed, and her voice trembled. "What happens to me now?" Caden looked at her, and he spoke one word with gentle force, the kind of force that saves instead of harms. "Freedom," he said. Seraphine's breath hitched, and for the first time, she let a tear fall. It slid down along the line of an old scar, and instead of making her ugly, it made her look like someone who had survived a war and was still brave enough to feel. The craft sped toward the human fleet, toward uncertain battles, toward retaliation, toward a sky full of threats. But Caden felt something settle in his chest, something stronger than fear, because he had walked into a throne room as prey, and he was leaving it as a storm. And beside him sat the princess they called ugly, the princess who was a secret, a key, a weapon, and now, a person with a choice. The stars opened ahead like a door, and the future rushed toward them, bright and unforgiving. Caden tightened his grip on the controls and spoke softly, with a promise that sounded like a vow. "No more cages," he said. Seraphine nodded, and her voice rose, clear, fierce, and full of life. "No more cages," she repeated. And behind them, the Vayari Empire trembled, because it had just learned the most dangerous truth in the universe. Never underestimate the human who refuses to kneel, and never mock the one they choose.